Donald Trump's closest advisor Steve Bannon thinks there will be war with China in the next few years. Donald Trump. Donald Trump's closest advisor Steve Bannon thinks there will be war with China in the next few years. Donald Trump's closest advisor thinks that the US will be at war with China in the next few years. The far-right figure, who has been given unprecedented power in the White House and has suggested in the past that he supports white supremacy, suggested that the two countries are headed towards war over the South China Sea. "We're going to war in the South China Sea in 5 to 10 years, aren't we?" Mr. Bannon said on his radio show in May 20, 2020. There's no doubt about that. They're taking the sandbars and making basically stationary aircraft carriers and putting missiles on those. They come here to the United States in front of our face, and you understand how important face is, and say it's an ancient territorial sea. Tensions between the China and the US and Japan, as well as other countries, have increased in recent years over a dispute about who exactly owns the part of the Pacific Ocean. China has been asserting its ownership of the sea by building huge islands in it on which it has put military installations. Since Donald Trump's election, and the anti-Chinese rhetoric that marked the campaign that preceded it, the relationship between China and the US has become increasingly fraught. Last week a senior Chinese military official said that war with the US is not just a slogan, and that it was becoming a practical reality. The same official called for increased military deployments in the East and South China Seas to guard the area. Mr. Bannon's views are coming under increased scrutiny as he ascends to power within the White House. Over the weekend it emerged that Mr. Bannon had been appointed to a committee on which only senior generals usually sit, a move that journalist Michael Moore seemed to suggest a coup was underway. The ex-head of Breitbart has in the past likened himself to Lenin, for instance. "The Russian leader wanted to destroy the state, and that's my goal too. I want to bring everything crashing down, and destroy all of today's establishment," he told a reporter from the Daily Beast. US Air Force ramps up flyovers near China in sign of rising tension and risk of conflict between world powers. US Air Force ramps up flyovers near China in sign of rising tension and risk of conflict between world powers. The United States Air Force has ramped up flyovers of B-1B Lancer bombers over waters near China amid growing bitterness between the two powers on all fronts. The flyovers came with increased military operations by both the US Navy and Air Force in the South China Sea, East China Sea, the Taiwan Strait and the Yellow Sea this year, while China's military observers warned of rising risks of military conflict between the two countries. In the latest announcement, the US Pacific Air Forces said on Twitter on Tuesday that B-1 bombers conducted a mission in the South China Sea, just days after training with the US Navy near Hawaii, demonstrating the credibility of US Air Forces to address a diverse and uncertain security environment. Beijing and Washington remain locked in a war of words over each other's handling of the COVID-19 crisis, and the origin of the virus that has killed more than 324,000 people and infected nearly 5 million people around the world. The blame game has caused rifts in an already strained relationship, affecting a range of activities, including journalism, trade, technology, and the military. The US Air Force deployed 4 B-1B bombers and about 200 airmen from Texas to the Anderson Air Force Base in Guam on May 1, saying the mission was to support Pacific Air Forces and to conduct training and operations with allies and partners. Li Ji, a military specialist based in Beijing, said the deployments showed that the US was trying to keep up strategic deterrence, with the US Air Force conducting 11 flights in March and 13 in April over the Taiwan Strait and South China Sea. Obviously, decision makers in the Pentagon are trying to use the bombers as a new tool in its strategic deterrence against China. "We will see intensified B-1 interference into airspace over the Taiwan Strait and the South China Sea in May," Li said. He noted that soon after the dispatch of Guam, 2 B-1B bombers flew over the East China Sea, and also flew over the waters off the coast of northeast Taiwan on May 6, which he said was an indication to Taiwan that the US had not given up its military influence in the region. The US Air Force sent 2 B-1B Lancers for a 32-hour round-trip flight over the South China Sea on April 29. It rotated B-1, B-2 and B-52 bombers, the three strategic bombers in the U.S. Air Force fleet, among other military aircraft, to fly over the contested waters near China. On May 14, the Chinese Navy started an 11-week military exercise in waters off the northern port city of Tangshan in the Yellow Sea. The U.S. sent a warship through the Taiwan Strait on the same day, marking the sixth passage of the strait by a U.S. Navy vessel this year. The U.S. Indo-Pacific Command said on Wednesday that the U.S. Navy had conducted a mine warfare training exercise in the East China Sea. China is also on the way to upgrade its military strength. It put two new upgraded nuclear-powered strategic submarines into service last month, and it is also considering the launch of a new generation of strategic bomber, the Xi'an H-20 supersonic stealth bomber, possibly within this year. The U.S. Indo-Pacific Command said on Wednesday that the U.S. Navy had conducted a mine warfare training exercise in the East China Sea. China is also on the way to upgrade its military strength. It put two new upgraded nuclear-powered strategic submarines into service last month, and it is also considering the launch of a new generation of strategic bomber, the Xi'an H-20 supersonic stealth bomber, possibly within this year. Zhu Feng, director of international studies at Nanjing University, said tensions in the South China Sea had become increasingly tense and turbulent in the past 3 months and were closely linked to political and diplomatic conflict between the two countries. The U.S. military is concerned that the coronavirus may offer a window of opportunity for China to increase military presence in the South China Sea, or even increase the odds of a military operation against Taiwan, he said. China's tough response may further fuel the Trump administration's push to contain China on other fronts, pressing ahead with the U.S. Indo-Pacific strategy, an important tactic for the U.S. to draw allies in the region over to its side and further alienate China, Zhu said. Song Zhongping, a Hong Kong-based military affairs commentator, said the frequent flyovers of B-1 and B-52 jets were not only to display the U.S. military presence but were exercises looking ahead to potential battles of the future. The B-1, replacing B-52, needs to fly around the waters to know the battlefield conditions well, he said. China and the US are entering into a full-fledged competition, and the situation is grimmer than the US-Soviet Union Cold War. Risks of military conflict cannot be ruled out in the South China Sea and Taiwan Strait. And they are increasing, Song said. China fires its latest underwater nuclear missile into spotlight with Science Prize. JL-3 could reach the United States if launched from Chinese coast. Type 096 submarines expected to be armed with the missiles. Researchers involved in the development of China's most advanced submarine-launched nuclear missile, the JL-3, have been recognized in one of the country's top science awards. The team that worked on the underwater-launched Large Solid Fuel Carrier Rocket, or SLBM, is among the 10 nominated to receive a national award for excellence in innovation. China has not officially confirmed it is developing the JL-3 or Big Wave missile, but the Chinese Navy has tested it, as reported by the South China Morning Post. The People's Liberation Army KLA rocket force is developing its third-generation SLBM JL-3, with a range of over 12,000 kilometers, 7,450 miles, far enough to hit the United States if the missile was launched from the Chinese coast. China conducted a few test flights in 2018 and 2019. Chinese military observers have said the missile tests were in response to US President Donald Trump's targeting of China in his deterrence strategy. This missile's predecessor, JL-2, which had a range of 7,400 kilometers, was deployed on Type 094A nuclear submarines for operational patrol in 2015, signaling that China finally had a credible sea-based nuclear capability. The new intercontinental range solid fuel JL-3 is estimated to be fully integrated with the next generation submarine Type 096 in 2025. Its last test, in December, was conducted using the Type 094 nuclear submarine, but the Chinese military plans to arm the Type 096 submarine with the missiles, a process that could take years to complete. Number of individuals from military and space research institutions were also nominated for commemorative decorations and honorary mentions. Personnel working on the hypersonic pre-cooled aerospace engine and vehicle system for high-speed interconnection in space, for space station docking, were also nominated. Last year, the revelation of China's F-17 missiles represented the world's first hypersonic glider weapons in service. But the F-17 is believed to be propelled by a traditional rocket engine before its payload-carrying vehicle enters unpowered glide. The hypersonic pre-cooled aerospace engine is more advanced and can be used to power hypersonic cruise missiles and aircraft, as it sustains cruise flights at over 5 times the speed of sound, and even aerospace planes when fully developed. It breathes in and pre-cools the air that overheats during hypersonic flying as the oxidant. The leader in this area is Britain's Sabre engine, originally designed for the space plane Skylon. Britain is expected to start building and testing a prototype this year. The extent of China's progress in such engines is unknown, but the award nomination suggests that significant research work has been completed. The scientists behind the docking system won their award for working out how to safely and efficiently connect spaceships to a space station in orbit when both are moving at the first cosmic velocity of 7.9 kilometers per second, 4.9 miles a second. Last week, a new design of spaceship was launched into space then retrieved, taking another step towards building a permanent Chinese space station, which is set to be completed in 2022. With the improved quick docking technologies, the time a spaceship takes preparing for docking to the station could be reduced from 2 to 3 days to 6 hours, saving significantly on fuel, making time for emergency missions and improving astronauts' space experience. China tested quick docking in 2017 using a cargo spaceship and experimental space station Tiangong-2, after extensive manned and unmanned conventional docking and detaching in space with Tiangong-1 and Tiangong-2. The National Award for Excellence in Innovation was launched in 2017 and intended to be held every 3 years. The first edition's winners included teams working on the Beidou satellite system, the Long March 5 rocket and the Warship Integrated Electricity System at the PLA Naval University of Engineering.